Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Premier Sim Gaming League here with some more PC F3 action. We've had two different winners in the first 2 weeks. Will we see 3 out of 3 at one of the most historic and the longest circuit on the calendar? We're at Spa-Francorchamps for the Belgium Grand Prix. My name is Luke Etheridge. I'm with you, I was going to say as always, but this is actually going to be my last week on F3. Paul can't make it tonight, but we've got more than a capable replacement in Ben Sapsford. Ben, how are you doing?
How you doing? I was doing great. Happy to be here. Special occasion when they break me out the box. But you say Paul unfortunately couldn't make it. So I've happily come in to step in, and honestly, great opportunity. Really happy to be here. Looking forward to some exciting racing today.
Yeah, Spa, it's a historic circuit. We all know about it. It's sort of the polar opposite of what we had last week, where we had the newest circuit on the Formula 1 calendar, of course, with the Miami Grand Prix. And that was a fantastic performance last time out then for Drake Dempsey, who ended up taking the victory there in slightly controversial circumstances. You might remember there was an incident on lap number 1 on the race involving both of the Ferraris, so Dempsey and Olaf Soku, and also involving Jona Martins. Jona took that to the stewards. In the end, there was no further action, but Drake taking the victory. We saw a podium, also a 1-2 then for Ferrari, with Olaf Soku getting second, and a third place for Jene Dovzan. What that has done for the championship, with Zander Van Dijken and Zoltan Bode finishing a bit lower down, they're actually tied on 20 points at the moment. Drake Dempsey has 17, Jene has 16, Daniel Kieja 15, and then you've got Olaf Soku on 12. Still, obviously, very early days, but in an 11-race championship, we're already 2 races in. You need that consistency. You need to keep picking up these points. You can't afford too many non-scores.
Yeah, and of course, you've got to think as well, this early into the championship, you can almost start to see some trends form. So whether you see drivers with some standout performances, whether you see some drivers who may not be the fastest, but are consistently racking up those points over time. And as you said, those points are especially important. And you really start to see a little bit of trend forming across the field.
Yeah, you do. I mean, Zoltan Bode has not been the fastest in either of the races, but he's tied in the championship lead at the moment because he's kept it clean, and Zander did not manage to do that last time. We'll quickly, before qualifying starts, we'll quickly give you a quick look at what the circuit looks like. One we said we're all familiar with, 7.004 kilometres, 19 turns, 2 DRS zones, 1 into La Source, and then 1 down McKemmel straight into Lacombe, where we saw a bit of shenanigans, I think it's fair to say, yesterday in the F1 race, and that is something the drivers have got to cope with. It's one of these circuits, Spa, where starting on pole position might not be the greatest thing, because you just give everyone a great big dirty toe all the way down for basically the first 30 seconds of the lap.
Yeah, it can get a little bit messy there, and so, as you said, we had a little bit of shenanigans going on. Hopefully we don't see too much drama of that form here in F3, but I'm looking forward to say curious as to how the drivers handle the challenges. So we've gone from 2 completely different circuit types. We've gone, as you say, Miami all the way to the historic Spa-Francorchamps, and it will be interesting to see how the drivers adapt, because it's a different kind of circuit, different kind of surface, different challenges. I say lots more known for the verticality, and of course iconic corners like Eau Rouge, Raidillon, Pouhon. It's a lot of different challenges these drivers have to face.
Yeah, they will have to, like you said, face all these different challenges, and it won't be long before they're facing them, because I can tell you, qualifying is, well, no, I say it's underway. The session has started. No one rushing out onto the circuit at the moment. I say that, we've got one car just heading out to the pit lane. That is one of the McLarens, and judging by his keenness so far this season, it is our championship leader, Zander Van Dijken. Now, again, long circuit on the calendar. We've mentioned this a few times. Means you can't really afford to make too many mistakes in qualifying. You've got to get your good runs in pretty early on.
And I guess sort of to extend that, even if you don't get a good run, I think it's important for all of these drivers to get a banker lap in, because it's a safety net. Because if you have that banker lap, if you have that behind you, and you, let's say, exceed track limits slightly, you at least have something to say, okay, I still have a time posted. It's not all lost.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think, we were speaking a bit beforehand about, different ways people like to do stuff, and that is it sometimes. If you just have that banker lap, that safety net, then you can obviously push a bit harder on a second lap. We sometimes see, obviously, in F1 a lot where we have the longer qualifying drivers just go out on a used set of tyres just to get that bit of a delta in, so they feel nicer later on when they see that they have got a green time. We haven't got too many drivers sitting back in the pit lane at the moment. I think Alessandro Moras is going to be the last one to go out. Hopefully, shouldn't be too many traffic issues, unlike at Austria, of course, round number 1 of the season, which is where Xander took pole position. And this circuit, I always love seeing how the drivers set up for things around here. On this game, it does seem to be a bit more of a 0-0 wings, seems to be the way, of course. But you always used to have that compromise between Sector 1 and Sector 3, extremely fast with some heavy braking zones, and then Sector 2 is where you really needed that downforce of the car. So you could really have quite a mixture between cars that are good in qualifying and good in the race.
Yeah, it does come down a little bit to the driving style as well. So, of course, some people like to be a lot more aggressive on, say, turn-in, whereas some like to be a bit smoother with their inputs. And you really have to adjust the car to that, how much speed you can carry, the kind of lines that you take, especially as conditions might change. It's all about how you drive and adapting, especially with these new regulations, how you adapt that to your car setup to optimize.
Yeah, certainly, and we'll see how well they adapt tonight. We'll go on board then with the man who was looking good in qualifying last week, but it all went wrong for him before we'd even got to turn 1. Jonah Martins making his way into the last source hairpin now, going down to 3rd gear. Not something you would have seen before the recent update the other week, of course. Now heading downhill towards Eau Rouge and Radion. In an old Formula 1 car, extremely tricky. In a modern one, not really anywhere near as much. Just a nice steady flat out section through there. DRS open. He heads down the long Kemmel straight, just reaching top gear there, 212 miles per hour, so talking about 340 kilometers per hour nearly. He makes his way through La Source and Malmedy, nice and steady over the curve at that point. Now the downhill braking zone into Bruchel. Very easy to snatch a breakthrough here as you're putting that more load on the front tyre. But no such trouble for him. Coming through No Name Corner, a common place to see in validations on this game. And then not taking the esports line that we saw as much on previous games. Definitely isn't as rewarding as it once was through the tricky left-hander there at Pouhon. Now really into this middle sector, into the campus chicane, 5th gear. Won't see too many overtakes through here, but you need to be careful on the exit of the corner. There is a bit of gravel there that can catch you out. Now getting ready through Stavolo and Paul Frere, and it is all about nailing this corner for another fantastic flat-out run towards the Blanchimont corner. Just there, climbing up through the gears there. You've got this tiny little left kink before you come to the real part of Blanchimont. Again, used to be massively difficult. No such trouble for a modern Formula 1 car, and especially drivers of this calibre. Into the bus stop chicane then, heavy braking. Was reprofiled in time for the 2007 race, so no longer resembles a bus stop. Jonah nice and cleanly through there. He does a 1:42.250, and it is Valentin Taivard, fastest of everyone, on a 1:41.923. Valentin, again, showing that reputation of being a qualifying specialist, so maybe someone who does prefer a bit more of an aggressive setup.
Yeah, I'd say you're starting to see those differences come into play up down the field. We're starting to see the timing boards light up, so the 141s and the 142s. So we've got our own version of Mr. Saturday here down at F3. It's always nice to see. But I think one thing we've got to call out is just how stable these drivers are keeping the cars. So it's all too common to go a little bit aggressive on your setup and get a little bit squirrely on throttle if you're not too careful. But as we saw from the lap from Jonah Martins there, none of that to be seen. Kept it clean, kept it stable, not an issue.
Yeah, it was all very steady, and like we said, the drivers tend to run as little downforce as they can get away with, which around this circuit is as little downforce as the game lets you get away with at the moment. So yeah, no such troubles whatsoever. Really having these cars suiting them how they want, especially out of the slow speed corners. Last source one where you really don't want to have the rear end starting to get away from you, because you will get into all sorts of trouble. And we've got to say, big congratulations to Joseph Lowe, who won a race in the British Formula 4 last weekend at Knockhill. So very short track there on their calendar. I think it's slightly different this time around, and we'll see how he does on his second run after invalidating his first lap earlier on. It's not a circuit where you do see too many track limit validations. We mentioned No Name Corner. It's only really there, and I suppose perhaps if you get a bit greedy through Lacombe, where drivers are likely to run all 3 wheels off track and invalidate their lap times.
It's like we were saying earlier, it's all about carrying the speed, and you can get a little bit too greedy and overextend into places like No Name Corner, but you have to run the compromise. So luckily, all of the drivers, bar 2, have managed to set a lap at least, so they have something on the timing board to their name. But yeah, you do really just push as hard as you can, pray that you make the corner and you don't get investigated for track limits. But it's all about the fine margins, especially at this level.
Yeah, you've also got to pray that you don't get into trouble for a serious collision. Jake Finch has just had a 5-place penalty for a serious collision with Valentine Thyvard. And then as soon as it came up, I looked where they were, and they were both on their way into the pit lane. So not quite sure what has happened with that one, but that'll be a bit of a disaster for Jake. Got his first points of the season last time out. He's going to have to go some this time around. Now, of course, we've mentioned this before, 2022 rules. You can use whatever tyres you want in the race. You're not limited by what you want to do in qualifying. However, because of some issues with the game, there are no formation laps anymore. Well, there's no formation laps for tonight, meaning everyone is going to have really cold tyres. So, could we see a few drivers maybe just start on the soft to try to get a bit of a jump on everyone else, even though it really doesn't look like the optimal strategy?
I honestly think that's what we're going to see. Drivers are going to be thinking a lot about that lack of formation lap heading into the race. So they're going to be thinking, okay, what is the quickest way I can get my tyres up to 10 and I can get the most performance out of them? And the obvious answer is going to be the softs. The softs and being very aggressive in the early opening laps of the race is going to be the recipe that gets them back to the performance they want, because they have to be very careful, because with those cold tyres, you might as well be running on sleet and ice.
Yes. We're assuming, of course, that we don't get too much Belgium weather, and we're assuming it's going to be dry for the race, which, again, is probably a bit of a brave assumption to make. First runs are over for everyone in qualifying. We've got a few drivers just starting to make their way out for the second ones as well. It's still Valentine Thyvard, the only driver to get underneath a 1 minute 42 at the moment. He's only a 10th off Carter Lundy's prediction, so hello to Carter and everyone else in the chat. Hope you're enjoying the action so far. Modesto Mena in second, Xander Van Dyken, Jona Martins third and fourth, and Zoltan Boda, who's tied with Xander Van Dyken in the championship, he is in fifth. Let us know your predictions for pole position and the race win, and if you want to do some more predicting, make sure to check out Grid Rival for the PSGL Fantasy League and all the social features involved with that. The link is down in the chat below. And once again, judging by my luck with the fantasy leagues, I really need to either pay more attention to them or just stop doing them entirely. Normally, whichever drivers I put in, you can guarantee they're not going to have a good session. Not having a good session at the moment is the Ferrari of Luka Mlenak, so he'll be wanting to, get a bit of a good run in. And what do you do in this situation? You've invalidated 1-1 already. Do you go all out on this, or do you just leave a tiny bit in hand, as we were saying earlier, to make sure you get a valid time? Because we're already halfway through the session. Time flies at Spa because of how long it is.
Yep, I think you do just have to play it safe, because it's ultimately going to be a lot worse for yourself if you don't have a time to your name from pushing too hard than if you have one, even if it's slow. Because what might be slow to you, you never know. It might be actually enough to place yourself maybe in the mid-pack. So having that benchmark at least is important.
Yeah, certainly. That's how things have got to go at the moment. So we'll see what Luca can do as he just makes his way up Eau Rouge and Radion at this moment in time. Seeing they're about 182.9, 190, slightly faster than what we saw Jona Martin do at the brow of the hill earlier. So whether Luca's just able to carry more speed now that the circuit has bubbled in a bit more, and you can see at the end of the straight 213 miles per hour and a 29.7 first sector, so not doing too bad. He has got a few cars ahead of him on a lap, and just there invalidated. Didn't look like he'd gone off track by much, but fine margins coming for Lacombe. And Luca is going to have to go for another run. Jeffrey Ritchie, another driver who was invalidated. And Jeffrey, he's really had he's had an unlucky couple of races. He's had the pace in qualifying, but things just haven't got in your way. And that can sometimes lead to you driving in a different style. And I always think if you drive different to how you naturally want to, sometimes that just compounds the errors.
Yeah, it is something that you've got to keep in check, to say your outlook and say your mindset. Just hopping back to Luca, I think what's happening to them is they're getting frustrated. You can see the timer ticking down. You know that you have to set a lap, and they're thinking that they have to get a good lap because they're running out of chances. And by overextending and getting frustrated is ultimately what's leading to these invalidations. So you need to keep it in check. You still need to play it safe, keep it measured, say, okay, maybe I haven't got a time, but I just need to put something on the board at this stage. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, certainly. It's the worst thing racing drivers can really do is overthink it. You've got to be driving all on feel and talent, and as soon as you stop doing that, you can get yourselves into a bit of a problem. Drake Dempsey comes across the line, gets himself up into third place. Jan Halliday follows in behind to get into fifth. Both of the McLarens have invalidated on this second run, so I think now that they have got that first safer running, we are seeing the drivers push that tiny bit more. Get Owned making his way around that bus stop chicane. 12th and 13th for the two AlphaTauri's at the moment. What can Get Owned do as he comes across the line? Only a small improvement in the end puts him into 10th, but I think we are seeing drivers just getting frustrated and pushing almost for that perfect lap. And on board with Modesto Mena, who did one of the best performances I've ever seen in a race last season here in PSGL F3. It was one of the few races I did on the PC. He qualified in last. He finished in third. You can't do much better than that. Mena towards the line. Slots himself into second, just under a tenth off Valentin Taivard. But that time from the Haas driver, proving hard to beat at the moment. Still, only manning the 141s, and you'd imagine once he goes out again, he'll be able to find another tenth or two.
Yeah, and it's really just a testament to say how dialed in they are with the cars. So we had that talk earlier about, say, potentially getting your emotions out of check, but we can see up and down the field, you can see what drivers are having that trust in the car and putting that full commitment into the car, knowing that it's going to go, predicting how it's going to behave, and just being at one with the machinery underneath them. And it pays dividends to say the only driver, Valentin Taivard, with a 141.9, and that's pre-track evolution. So we're heading to the last few minutes now, and drivers are, as you say, scrambling to get those perfect laps in as the minutes dwindle. I think we're going to see some last-minute rushes.
Yeah, we are. I mean, it's a fairly close qualifying session at the moment. The 19 drivers that have managed to set a lap time at the moment, Luca excluded from that, all within 3/4 of a second. So things are pretty close for a circuit with 19 corners, some technical sections, a lot of straights. To see the drivers that close together at the moment is pretty impressive. Mena's got himself into second, Boda up into third. I mean, again, we're talking top 10 drivers. We're in 0.33 at the moment. Jake will be getting a grid penalty. I've had it confirmed in the Discord. They will not be restarting for that, so it will be a grid penalty, unfortunately, for Jake. And we are seeing now a few more drivers heading out into the final runs in the session.
Yeah, the timer ticks down, all to play for. Everyone's heading into the pits at the moment, so trying to get one last rush, I think. They're trying to get that absolute last opportunity, running it down to the margins with the timer. We've seen a really good performance. It's just over 0.7 of a second spread across the entire session. Just how tightly packed the grid is and the level of skill on display is really second to none, honestly. It's a testament to all the drivers on track here today, all the drivers who have made it to tonight's round here. My hat's off to you. I could never match that in my racing.
Yeah, certainly. It's always really impressive. It's a bit demoralising as well when you see in F1 tier when they use the intermediate, just how good the intermediate tyres are now on this game, because sometimes the setting times that even in a drive I struggle with on occasion. They do a superb job, as Jona in the end decided to back it in towards the pit lane. We are seeing a few more clouds come around the Spa circuit, but I imagine it is going to stay dry for the entirety of the qualifying session, as we are getting a few more coming out onto the circuit as well. Leonard Goetze, he's starting a lap. Jarne Tripkov, he's pretty early on a lap as well. And of course, Zander van Dijken, our championship leader after 2 rounds. Round number 1 would have had a good result on the last time, but the safety car in the race combined with a penalty just sort of put him on the back foot a bit. And that's always a worry if you get penalties, that there will be a safety car. And this is a circuit where big incidents are known to happen.
Yeah, especially some of the conditions, not a lot of the drivers are acclimatized to. So the track is known in places for its verticality, so the amount of incline, declines, and in potentially for some of the drivers here, they may not be fully used to that, or at least not with these new chassis, these 2022 regulations. Might not be fully acclimatized to how these cars behave under those circumstances. Now, one I would say to watch is Valentin Taivard. To say they've got fun fact here is they themselves and Modesto Mena have got the identical Sector 1 time, according to my statistics on the table, down to the millisecond. So the question is, with the track evolution, with the closing minutes of qualifying, are we going to see that gap between Taivard and Mena go even larger?
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. You can't get much closer than that. We've just seen Luka Mlinak get his way up into 8th place at the moment, so managing to leave it all out there on the final run, so that is going to be it for him. Zander van Dijken, that knocked him down in towards 9th place. And we'll see what happened at the moment. We're hearing Luka might have actually got blocked on his lap as well. So we'll wait and see if there are any afters in the stewards. Of course, if someone is found guilty of blocking, they can find themselves getting slapped with a grid penalty for next time, sending themselves back of the grid. 10th down for Van Dijken at the moment as he makes his way in towards Malmedy, in towards Buchel, which on lap 1 is a corner where if the drivers are feeling brave, you can see the odd overtakes at these parts of the circuit, but you've got to be willing to expect a tiny bit of wheel banging if you do that.
Yeah, so you've got to be careful of the cars around you. Yeah, I'd say with Luca, it's certainly a curious case, as we'll have to see what comes out of race control, any sort of findings on track with that. So they had the fastest sector one time, 29.694, and then just 2 milliseconds off the fastest sector 3. So that does suggest to me they could have potentially been blocked, but of course we'll have to wait and see. Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see. Zander has managed to find a bit more time then in the middle sector, so he's recovered pretty well. He's only found half a tenth of a second on his personal best, but just look how close things are at the moment. If he finds another half a tenth in the final sector, he's onto the front 2 rows of the grid, so this is looking pretty good for Zander Van Dijken at the moment as he makes his way in towards the final chicane, into the McLaren. Thomas Lamminen retires in the pits. He's pretty happy with his 6th place and not got time to come out again. Checkered flag is out. And Van Dijken does get himself in towards that 12th place. One of the Aston Martins behind, that's Yanni Tripkov, gets himself in towards a 12th place. Luca on his way back towards the pits. Valentin Tijvard, he's invalidated, so he's got to hope that first lap is somehow good enough to get in pole position. Leonard Goetze, someone who was battling towards the top of the championship last season, he gets himself up into 7th with that lap. We'll see who else there is. Jake Finch has shot himself into 3rd place. Great lap by the young man there. Andrew Karapi now gets himself into 7th. We are seeing tons of improvements at the end of this session. Jeffrey Ritchie, though, he can only stay down towards 17th. How many of the big names finding time at the moment? Modesto Mena, he's backed off on this lap, and Drake Dempsey, well, we'll have to wait and see what he's doing. Zoltan Boda comes towards the line. No improvement from him, so it's looking pretty good at the moment for Valentin.
Yeah, it's looking pretty strong. As I say, of course, they did have that invalidation, but it doesn't look like it's mattered in the end. So we've got Modesto Mena coming up, and of course, it looks like they're going to the pits, though it's not going to be a run. We've got the last few drivers coming around now, so just hopping in with them on my POV here. So we've got Morgan Ball coming across bus stop chicane. So fun fact, only going over the FIA mandated limit of 7 kilometers after they reprofiled the bus stop chicane. But there we go. That is P15 for the Red Bull there. It's a good showing. So Jonah Martins coming in with a P2. What the only other time to come under the 142 barrier. What a performance there from the McLaren.
Yeah, certainly. Fantastic lap from him. Joseph Lowe taking 3rd place as well at the end. So we said Valentin was pretty safe. He might have been feeling a bit nervous when he saw the times of Jonah and Joseph Lowe, but he has just managed to do enough then in that session. Valentin Tijvard, fastest of everyone. Jonah Martins is in 2nd place. Joseph Lowe 3rd. Modesto Mena in 4th. Jake Finch in 5th. You can see the rest of the grid on the screen there as we run it down for you. Zoltan Boda, Zander Van Dijken, they're tied in the lead of the championship. 6th and 7th on the grid. Dempsey, Karapi and Goetze round out the top 10. Thomas Lamminen in 11th, and then it's Jan Halledej, Luka Mlinak, Yanni Tripkov, Morgan Ball, Alessandro Maras, Get Owned, Simon Lakomsky, Yoni Dovzan and Jeffrey Ritchie. Half a second off pole position, and he is in last place. We'll be back with the race after this short break. Yeah, then. So we are heading straight in towards the race, of course, today. There won't be any of the formation lap. But Ben, that was a superb qualifying session that we saw there. Half a second between the entire grid, and Valentin once again, he's got the pace. We know that. But as we've seen with a couple of invalidations, penalties and maybe having the pace and consistency over the race could end up costing him.
Yeah, it's got to be careful. My thoughts on qualifying. Ooh. Some of the pace on display there, say some of the heroics that we saw on track is a sight to behold, truly. Now, it's all well and good to say they've got good positions, but they've got to make the most of these opening laps. I say we've got the race coming in here in a second, but just remember, there is no formation lap. There is no chance for these drivers to heat up their tyres to the optimum temperature for that getaway. So this is going to be alien territory for some of them, I know, and some of them are going to be a little bit worried. Might have to play it safe as we head through into the race. It's going to be an exciting.
Yeah, it is. No heroics into La Source, I think is going to be the order of the day today. So there we go. We're getting the lights coming on here at Spa. 5 lights are on. They go out, and the Belgian Grand Prix is underway. What are the starts like? It seems like a pretty decent start then from Valentin there on the inside line. Jonas Martins trying to go all the way around the outside. Can't quite manage it at the moment. And Zoltan Boda having a bit of a challenge on that set of the medium tyres. Only himself, Morgan Ball, and Jeffrey Ritchie have gone for that. Modesto Mena gets ahead of Boda in the background, but it looks like everyone has made it cleanly through the first few corners. It is Tyvard, Martins, Loke, Mena, Dempsey, Boda, who understandably got a very good one. And look at the train, the snake down the straight as they all try to warm their tyres up. Leonard Goetzer round the outside of our championship leader, Xander Van Dijken, but everyone making it through the first few corners cleanly, which is great to see.
Yeah, we love to see it, honestly. And a little bit of a surprise for myself. I say a lot of the drivers have acknowledged that they haven't got the time to warm the tyres and ultimately haven't changed their strategy. We're seeing primarily a hard compound across the field. We've got a few standouts like Zoltan Boda, Morgan Ball, and Jeffrey Ritchie on the medium compounds. But beyond that, everyone is on the hard. So I think we're potentially seeing a hard to medium strategy. But heading through here, everyone's keeping it clean so far. You can see a little bit of adjustment of the lines where they haven't got all the grip, where they're trying to get the heat in. A little bit of snaking, as you said, on the Kemmel Straight heading down. It's all about these opening laps. It's about preparation, setting yourself up for the laps to come.
Yeah, you would expect those on the mediums to obviously get the better starts. One of them, Morgan Ball, up 4 places. Jeffrey Ritchie up 3. Zoltan Boda making it up 1 at the moment. He's going to have to go side by side here with Modesto Mena. He's managed to get the move done, thankfully for him, before he's got to launch him on. Otherwise, that could have been quite scary indeed. And he is now up in towards 4th place. And the front 3 sort of checked out in this first lap. Tyvard, Martins and Loke have already broken the DRS range to the cars behind. The drag reduction system will be activated next lap around. First time they'll be able to use it is down the Kemmel Straight. So that might be where we see a few more lead changes or perhaps a few tactics as drivers in these early stages want to save that bit of ERS. And we have got a yellow flag, and that is Luca, who's had a bit of an issue at La Source. We'll see if he's got any front wing damage on the car. Can't see any visible damage, which is good news for him, as the latest update did make the front wing damage a bit more meaningful and a bit more harder for the drivers to deal with. But the front 3, they've had the dream start, especially with the Alpha of Boda behind them being on a set of mediums.
Well, so it looks like, according to my data, they've managed to get away lucky from this one. It doesn't look like they've got any damage, although their rear tyres are a little bit cooked compared to the fronts, I say. At least they were reaching temperatures of 90 degrees carcass, I say. They're starting to get into that danger zone a little bit when you consider the corners to come. But I hope we can see a little bit of recovery. But heading back to the front of the field, so you're exactly right. The front runners have basically checked out. They had that prime track position. They knew what they had to do to negotiate the lack of formation lap, and they've just made the most of it. So you're starting to see breakaways from that DRS range, which is going to become crucial as we head through almost to lap 3 now, and where the DRS is going to really start kicking in and making some moves.
Yes, I'm beginning to wonder whether the Alpha Tauri squad have given their drivers an old track map, because both Leonard Goetzer and, well, it's not an Alpha Tauri, sorry, it's Simon Lakomsky, the other car, who has got a track limits penalty, but not what you want to be doing this early on in the race. Do not want to be getting any penalties whatsoever. And Valentin, he's definitely burning up his tyres, he's burning up his ERS at the moment, he's escaping at the front of the field, almost Sebastian Vettel-esque in his Red Bull days. And look at all the chaos Vettel's caused over the last week in the summer break. But Valentin Tyvard, he's got 1 second away. That is fantastic for him. But if Jona, I was going to say, if Jona can close that gap, he might have half a chance himself. But you can see there, as Lucan Lanak retires from the race in the pit lane, our first retirement so far, Jona has completely burnt off his battery as well. They've all pushed extremely hard in the first laps of this race.
Well, it's all about getting that breakaway, so making the most of the early laps before DRS can start to reel them back in, trying to make the absolute most of those early laps, as say using your resources while you have them, potentially get the strategic jump, because while it may cost you maybe say a second or so per lap, let's say if you go in a heavy recharge, you've also got to consider that the drivers behind you, if they're not in ERS, that's going to add up, or in DRS, sorry, my mistake. If they're not in DRS, they are going to be losing a lot of time to you and losing it fast, because they'll also be battling the drivers behind who may be within that range.
Yeah, DRS is still extremely powerful around here. It's the first track we've had on the PSGL calendar, for the lower tiers at least, that only has 2 DRS zones, not 3. One of those is very short, the other one is extremely long. It's only, I can think of Mexico, you know, similar length of a DRS zone, quite long. And Bahrain as well, another one that has that exceptionally long DRS zone. And Valentine's got the pace. He is just breaking away at the moment. We've got an Alpine in a podium place. We've got an Alpine further down the field, Thomas Lamanen. He's had his own little spin earlier on. Not sure if he made contact with Jeffrey Ritchie, but that is Lamanen now down in towards last place. Thankfully, still on this, well, we've got one massive long DRS train, which is what you'd expect at this circuit, but it isn't starting from the car in first place. It's starting from the car in 5th place. On board with Modesto Mena then, as he climbs through the gears, heading towards Eau Rouge and Radion. You don't want to be too close to the car in front here, as you do end up having to lift off, and Drake Dempsey is just about in the perfect place at the moment if he decides to go for this manoeuvre. Further up the field, Joseph Lowe gets his way past Jonas Martins, and I think Modesto Mena is going to find himself getting overtaken by the Ferrari. There goes Drake Dempsey, last week's race winner. He's up into the top 5. Oh, makes a tiny bit of a mistake. This might give Mena a chance to fight back. He's got a better run through Lacombe and Malmedy. In the end, though, has to stay behind. So that is Drake Dempsey up into 5th, but he's already 5 seconds off the lead of this race.
So a little bit of heroics coming to play there, maybe getting a little bit too brave. We'll see those mistakes starting to creep in. Hopefully this doesn't start a trend, because one thing you find is that once you make your first mistake, the door is open. If you're thinking about that first mistake, that's when you trip yourself up. You start to overthink, you start to almost lead yourself out of where you should be committing, and that's where you make mistake after mistake. Hopefully we don't see that runaway train start to derail for anyone on the grid here, because so far it's looking strong. So everyone doing very well to keep it clean as we head through here.
Yeah, everyone doing a fantastic job at the moment. Joseph Lokes starting to drop Jonas Martins already. It's going to be crucial for that McLaren to stay within range of the Alpine. It's going to be crucial for the other McLaren if he wants to retake this championship lead, for him to find a few places at the moment. His main rival is on the softer set of tyres, but it is about 3.5 seconds up the road from him at the moment. We're on board with Zander Van Dijken as he starts lap number 6 in that awkward, anything from 3rd back in a train is the awkward place, because the car in front of you is going to have DRS. You're not gaining as much on the slipstream, but Leonard Goetze locks up the rears there coming into La Source, and that is going to be a free position that I don't think Zander Van Dijken would have expected to have. They're going to be going side by side through a Rouge and Radion. Surely one of them has to yield in the end. Leonard didn't. Zander got a penalty. And this might allow Jake Finch to get a fantastic run on the pair of them. He's passing the Alfa Tauri on the outside. He's going to find himself, though, getting blocked in behind
He's
the
boxed
McLaren
in. It's
here.
very close. And it's a little bit of a nudge off track. We saw a lot of wheel bang hits there, something to cut you off. It's just, I can't contain my excitement. Say, completely boxed in. Jake had nowhere to go. They had absolutely nowhere to go there, and luckily managed to make the most of it, say, getting minimal contact and managing to keep it clean otherwise, but very dangerous situation in there.
Yeah, I think Leonard Goetze, I'm not sure whether he tapped it to the back of Jake or just lost it hopping over the curb, which can happen with these modern Formula 1 cars, but he is now down in towards 16th. I thought with the mistake he'd made coming out of La Source, it was going to be done for and Zander would streak past, but that was not the case in the end. It's cost Zander with a 3-second penalty, and it's cost Leonard an incredible 9 places. Not going well for the Alfa Tauri driver, who, as we mentioned, was up towards the top of the championship last year. In this year's championship at the moment, he wasn't there last week, didn't score many points in Austria, and barring a bit of a miracle with that 3-second time penalty, he might struggle to score some points today. Jan Halledage, he's pushed himself in towards the top 10 at the moment, just worked his way past Andrew Karapi. That Haas is close, but not quite close enough to think about a move into the bus stop, as Modesto Mena has disconnected from the session, so he's going to start plummeting down the order now, and that gives Drake Dempsey a bit of breathing space and gives Zander Van Dijken a free position. The McLaren driver up into 6th. Back towards the leaders though. Still Valentin Taizard keeping that gap at around 1.5 to 2 seconds at the moment, and Joseph Loke looking safe from Jona Martins. Both of these are burnt through their VRS. Jona's definitely not looking safe though from Zoltan Boda. He's on the Betam tyres, he's got the slipstream, he's got the inside line, and I think with the extra grip he's got on the brakes, that is the Hungarian into third.
Yeah, it's a brilliant move there. So they calculated that perfectly, knew exactly what they had to work with, and just executed it almost to perfection. So managing those medium compounds perfectly. So the compound advantage is strong here, especially considering the types of corners you are dealing here at Spa-Francorchamps. You've got to maximize that grip, but if you do, it would certainly pay dividends, especially on a compound with more room to play with.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, later on, everyone else, well, the majority of the field are going to be on the faster tyres, and Zoltan might find himself with a bit of defending to do. He's got that red fuel light on his car at the moment. It's similar to what the yellow fuel light meant on the previous games. It does not mean that he's only got one lap of fuel left, because that would be a bit of a disaster at this stage in the race, but it means he's a bit short on fuel. As you get longer into the race, though, using a bit less fuel under acceleration, braking, a bit less of the tyres through cornering as well, so it shouldn't be too much of a worry for him, but might just have to do a tiny bit of lift and coast later on, and if you're in a DRS frame, that's normally the easiest time that you're able to do it, as Maynard plummets down the field, and we're still seeing those clouds gathering around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. I just wonder whether we are going to see a tiny bit of rain in this race, which, if you're on the medium tyres, you're hoping the rain comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah, of course, the forecast to say drivers are going to be looking anxiously on and say, I've gotten the forecast data here. It's looking like it's going to be overcast. It's uncertain whether there might be some light showers. Of course, that's something the drivers are going to have to look out for. So, going to have to be on their feet should it come to a strategy call. So we can see Maynard is just dropping. That disconnect is so costly to them. They're all the way down in 18th position now. It's just how much this has costed them over the course of the race here in such a short time as well. So they're doing so well, only for something like a disconnect to immediately practically drop you to the back of the field. It's brutal, it's heartbreaking, and sometimes it's out of your control. There's not really much you can do. It can be things that you have no power over.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about that. I commentated on Georges Nader, who you'll be able to see later on in the F2 field. I commentated on him once, and he had no power. There was a power cut at his house, and that was it. Race was over, and this was on a previous game where rejoining used to cause a few problems with the lobby. So according to the rules of the league, that was it for him, and he was in a very good position as well. It's been a bit of a bad lap for Jerne Dovzan. He's been passed by his teammate for tonight, who is making his debut in the series, Simon Lakomsky. And that is Jerne Dovzan down to 14th, and also got a 3-second penalty. Maynard has been able to rejoin. He was in 7th when he left. He is now right down at the back of the field. Certainly not what he wanted as, Leonard Goetzer has retired from the session. Where is that? Is coming out of Paul Frere and Stavolo, and there is a bit of a wall that can catch you out there, and that is a safety car. And interestingly, the top two have stayed out.
It looks like they might have suffered terminal damage on that one because, say, they're just completely stranded, right not where you want to be. And so a lot of drivers heading into the pits now, capitalizing on the safety car here. But yeah, brutal way. Looks like also sudden, and if you push in too hard, what would have been a good race campaign can go as quickly as in the blink of an eye. And it always hurts. It's a push in for those last tenths. Not what you want to be seeing. It's always a shame.
Yes. What might hurt now is the tyre choice that we're seeing on screen for a few of these drivers. Boda, Ritchie and Ball have all gone for a set of soft tyres, which, yeah, you know, on the previous F1 games, that might have got you towards the end of this race at this point. You'd have had to be careful. On this one, I can't see them doing that. So all I'm thinking is that they've gone for the softs to do one lap on them, and they'll be coming in again for the mediums. Otherwise, they are going to have to go like crazy to probably build a pit stop gap, and we've already seen how close the field is. I can't see you managing to do that, so this is a very intriguing strategy from Boda, Ritchie and Ball. Boda's the lead car that has come into the pits. Jona Martins is the lead car on the more conventional medium tyres. He should be able to go towards the end. And obviously, all those top 9 have got to stay out. But I'm intrigued to see what the 3 cars that started on the medium tyres, that have gone to the softs, I'm intrigued to see what they do from here.
I think what's happening here, Luke, is that they're keeping their ears to the ground in regards to the weather. You can see in a matter of laps, the track has become more and more overcast. And I think to play a little bit tongue-in-cheek, they say they took the time in the pit stop to take the old glove off, lick the finger and hold it up, see what the wind direction is like. As you can see, the clouds are coming over. I think what they're doing is trying to burn the wick at both ends a little bit. They're both getting the advantage from the soft compounds, making the most of the pace, and then before it heads into potential rain, maximizing the tyre life and the pace advantage.
Yes, I mean, if it works, you're an absolute genius. And Mirko Soriano, Tia Tendernerko, as many of you might know him from our PlayStation League on the Mondays, he's saying, yeah, 100% Levine. Joseph Loke going for the same thing. Valentin Divard also going for that. So I think Mirko and yourself, Ben, have hit the nail on the head. They're going for the soft tyres in the expectation that we will see some rain in this race at some point. So Haladej, Krapi, Lukomsky, Maras and Tripkov have stayed out. Maras and Tripkov are between Divard, Loke and Boda, so that might be good news for Divard and Loke in the Haas and the Alpine, that they'll have 2 cars in between themselves and the rest of their rivals on the restarters. This is a very interesting strategy. I mean, there's gambling on the weather, and there's gambling on the weather. And you can see at the moment, Dovzan and Laminen are thinking, this rain's going to come quickly. They've gone for a set of the intermediates.
Yeah, I think we've gone for a big crossover point here. You already see a little bit of glazing going on with some of the tyres, I say. Some of them trying to get the heat into the softs. But like you say, with Dovzan and Laminen, I think they are just trying to think a little bit more ahead. They're trying to potentially, where some of them are playing 4D chess, they're going all the way into the 5th dimension, so to speak, because they're thinking by the time the safety car is released, safety car is in, it might already be raining.
It might be. I've done the opposite of this before. When it's been wet conditions, you know it's going to dry up a bit, so you put the intermediate tyres on under the safety car in the hope that by the time the safety car's stopped, and there we go, we are now seeing the telltale streaks of rain on the Halo camera here, so we are getting some rain. It just depends on how quickly the track gets wet. I commentated on a race around Miami a few days ago in the opposite situation, Inters to dry. It took about 10 to 15 laps for the track to get dry, so we'll see how quickly things get wet around here, but we are on sets of intermediate tyres. It's either looking very good for Tyvard, Loke and Boda, or it's looking very good for Dovzan and Laminen. This is going to be a very interesting first lap.
Yeah, I think it's all down to the timing. Of course, we have a safety car in this lap now. We're going to see who comes out on top. As those streaks are getting more and more frequent. Are they going to be able to max out the soft before the track finally gets some surface water? And we're immediately back to sliding around. But the question really here is all about how they're going to maximize the new positions they're in. So, of course, Tybard is on the softs, is in P4. You know that they're going to be trying to make as hard of a charge as they possibly can, heading through into the next few laps before they have to obviously make the switch to Inters if the rain persists. But here we go. Looks like we're about to get underway. Jan Haladej is leading the queue, trying to set themselves up for as much speed as possible, heading into the bus stop to say Lukomsky going into the pits right at the end as the release is interesting. I think they are going straight to the intermediates. I think they want to play it a little bit more safe, but it's away we go. It's looking good. Oh, it's a big lockup, it looks like, for Jan Haladej. We got Loke coming up the inside, brilliantly moved. A little bit of contact between the front wing of Tyvard and Loke heading through here. It's going down into Eau Rouge and Radion, trying to get as much speed as they can, having to let off a little bit. I think we're already seeing we're in that intermediate territory. I think that gamble hasn't quite paid off in Team Soft's favour.
Yeah, Jona Martin's got a 5-second penalty for corner cutting. Joseph Loke takes the lead in this race from Valentin Tyvard. Both him and Tyvard getting past Jan Haladej. We've got Jake Finch and Maras battling in the background. Dovzan and Laminen have got themselves into the top 10. And look how wet it is coming round Lacombe. This is fully intermediate conditions at the moment. What a fantastic strategy by Dovzan and Laminen. I mean, Laminen was last at one bit. All of a sudden, he's looking very good indeed. Karapi's nearly spinning the car on the hard tyres. Tyvard's out of the race. He's in the wall. Our pole sitter is into the wall. And we've got another safety car. And that has saved everyone who is on a set of slicks.
Oh, what a gamble it was. I'm sure people like Dovzan and Laminen, I think they've just gone through a roller coaster of emotions there. They've gone from surely elation to thinking, oh, well, great, we got another safety car. Now that advantage, that sort of forward thinking has immediately been diminished because now I've got Inters that are a lap older than everyone else's. But no, I say the unpredictability, we quickly settled in with some of the drivers at the front. We saw some absolute chaos at the back. They say we had this domain at the back. So we had Ghetto backwards at one point, coming off of the Kemmel Straight. And a lot of drivers say, like Lukomsky, really struggling with, say, the immediate change of conditions. Drivers have to be very adaptable with conditions like these. To say you have to adjust your lines, your approaches, how much application of throttle and braking you're doing, because your grip is diminishing rapidly. Or in the case of, say, the Inters, quickly evolving and changing. You have to be adaptable. And in fact, say I've seen scenarios like this of the opposite end of the scale. Drivers had a full wet qualifying, all 3 quali sessions, only to be met with a scorching track for the race itself, and having to adapt very quickly. But we're seeing everyone in on the dry compounds switching to what looks like Inters across the board.
Yes, it is, and Joseph Loke's actually not going to lose too much out of all of this. He was leading the race. He's coming to the pits. Obviously now only drops behind those that were already on a set of the intermediate tyres. Modesto Maina's got himself right back up into this position as well. So after that awkward start earlier on with the disconnection, all of a sudden, the Spaniard is in 5th place. Bit of a sit rep on how this race is going. You'd imagine everyone is now going towards the end, assuming that it doesn't get so wet that we see wet tyres, assuming that things don't dry out as well, but the track looking decidedly wet at the moment. I think the rain's going to have to stop pretty soon for things to dry out. It's Dovzan, Lamanen, Lukomsky, your top 3. Just take a look at these position changes. 18 for Dovzan, 15 for Lukomsky, 9 for Lamanen. It has been a crazy, crazy start to this race, and our front row of the grid, Divard's out of the race, Jona Martins right down at the back.
I tell you what, my heart hasn't pounded this hard since checking F1 Twitter lately. But having a look up and down the field and say we've got some internal data on the panels here, it doesn't look like it's going to be getting any drier anytime soon. If anything, it's going to get wetter, so you might be calling it there with eventually having to go onto the full wets. But of course, now I say we are in inter conditions. Everyone's going to be using the safety car period to say try and get a little bit of heat into them. Say try and potentially find a little bit of a dry line clearing up on the track here, and just learning the limits once again. You see a little bit of a wiggle there from Yane Turkov heading through Puon there. So a little bit of difficulty. I say drivers, got to mention as well, these guys are all on dry setups. And that's got to be a big thing to consider.
Yeah, of course, because, I mean, they may have seen that the rain was coming, but they'd have expected it to come. Probably not originally, if it wasn't for a safety car, it'd have been started to rain heavy round about lap 11. Of course, it started to absolutely throw it down round about lap 9 because of the safety car, so it's not gone quite as the drivers would have planned, but that's what we love about Formula 1. That's what we love about league racing. Especially, there's always that little bit of chaos. You never quite know what should happen, and you should never, ever give up. And I wonder whether Lukan Lenak's just regretting that retirement in the pit lane, because all of a sudden, he could have been right up there. I mean, Modesto's had a crazy race so far. He had a disconnection. He's in 5th place with the penalties from drivers ahead of him. You could arguably say he's on for a net podium all of a sudden. Could this be another last to first challenge from the Spaniard? Dovzan, Lamanen, Lukomsky, Loke, Maynard, Halliday, Dempsey, Krapi, Finch, Van Dijken. Our championship leader now in 10th place, just inside the points. Maras, Richie Ball, Turkov, Boda, Gettound and Jona Martins are the 17 drivers still in this. And it would be intriguing if we see it getting towards wet conditions. Obviously, the changeover between inters and wets is nowhere near as severe as the changeover between dry and inters. So I think you could have a mix of drivers gambling because it's a short pit lane on pitting for the wets and hoping they can make it up. And you'll have some of the drivers who will think, you know what, I'm comfortable on these tyres. Let's just stay out. The longer the safety car stays out, of course, the more likely we are to see wet tyres.
Yeah, well, you got to think as well, it's always a gamble because you've got to consider things like your tyre life. Depending how deep they're into the race, it might not even be viable to go in for the wets, even if it's more optimal conditions, even if you get better pace, it wouldn't be enough to overcome the time loss from a pit stop. So you might have to make that judgment call and tough it out after a certain point, even if you think a changing compound or a fresh set is going to be a better idea.
Yes, certainly. Let us know in the chat who you think is going to take the victory here. At the moment, Dovzan leading with that 3 seconds of time penalty. It's also 3 seconds for Lukomsky, Van Dijken and Ghetto. We did see Jona have 5 seconds. He took that in the pit lane, so won't be able to get that removed. And we saw Leonard Goetze with 6 seconds before he had his retirement. We've got a prediction here for Lukomsky. He's going to have to go some to overtake 2 cars and build a 3-second gap as well, but he's looking pretty good in this race all of a sudden in the Williams. And maybe a few drivers in qualifying did go for a bit more downforce on the car. We saw a few slight speed differences. Maybe some of these have thought, you know what, it might rain, I'll take the bit of pain in qualifying. At the end of the day, there's no points for qualifying. There's a potential 17 if you win here and get the fastest lap. Fastest lap at the moment is by Valentin Seibard, so no one will be getting that one. Safety car is in again this lap. 10 laps of hopefully green flag action as what is a very slippery Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah, I think you wouldn't be remiss there. Some drivers going for more of a safe setup or a jack of all trades, understanding that it is going to get cloudier, potentially rainier, and maybe opting rather than for peak pace and trying to eke out as much drag of the setup as possible. Maybe going a little bit safer, thinking if it does rain, I will still need that grip, I might lose out early initially, but I can make up for it. So, testament to the setup, just as important, if not more in some cases, than the racing itself in a lot of cases.
Yeah, certainly. It is now down then. Jerne Dovzan leads the field around. He's got a chance of taking the championship lead here this season. Obviously trying to take that tighter line through the bus stop just to get a bit of grip, and he's not been able to escape from everyone. We are back racing again. DRS will remain disabled after the safety car was already Loke down the inside then. Over Lakomsky, he's got his car ahead. And that is Joseph Loke into the lead of the race, well, into third place of it, and right behind his teammate for tonight. Jerne Dovzan is escaping away. Just how careful are they having to be? And you can see that is a gear change down for Loke, and a dab on the brakes coming from Eau Rouge and Madion. That turned out to be the way to go. Loke already up in towards second place. There were some moves further back as well, I think, between Ritchie, Ball and Turpkov. A few swaps there. Jonas Martins manages to stay on the back of the field. Zoltan Boda is plummeting down the order. He was in a podium place earlier. He's now in 16th as Haladej picks up another 3-second time penalty. Look at the pace Loke's got on his slightly newer, let's not forget, intermediate tyres. He's already gained 2 places and he's almost pushing Dovzan through Buchel. He's flying on these inters.
Yeah, I think he's just absolutely trying to make the most out of it. Coming off the safety car, people may have, tried to get a little bit more heat into them, trying to get more from the off. Not to mention your braking temperature as well. We're looking at some of the data here. It looks like across the board, the brakes are a fair bit hotter for the Alpine than they are for Dovzan. And I think that's going to come in crucial here, because you've got those heat and those brakes, of course, they don't come into their operating window. So they've got carbon brakes on these machines. It's really a masterpiece of engineering here. Don't come into their operating window until the hundreds of degrees. So if you let those get too cold, it takes a bit of time, takes a bit more heat. And I think as they play it out in their favor, Loke heading into first position as they're getting the move done excellently down the inside. So we head to the bus stop chicane. Dobson's going to peek down the inside. Bit of a lock up there. Not quite going to make it work as we head through to lap 14. Brilliant move executed by the Alpines and just absolutely scorching up the order. And so far is holding P1.
Yeah, I can already hear a few people thinking, well, if F1 brakes are so good, why don't we put their brakes on a road car? You have carbon brakes on your road car. Your ABS is kicking off all the time because you are not building anywhere near as much energy as you need. But Loke is just absolutely flying away at the moment. Almost a second ahead already, having that little bit of a moment at the top of the hill. Dovzan's almost a second ahead of Laminen as well. Further back, Jake Finch was able to get a move done on Andrew Karafi. We've got Maynard, Haladej and Dempsey at the moment. We've got Mercedes on the inside. Aston Martin trying to go for the move all the way around the outside of Lacombe. Haladej might find himself just getting chopped off here, and if Dempsey's smart, might be able to get the cutback coming through Malmedy. I think Haladej in the end saw that one coming. It is a very, very intriguing race at the moment as Laminen and Lakomsky are now having a bit of a battle. Down the inside goes Laminen, I think, to try to get this place back off Lakomsky. Tiny bit of wheel banging, but all is well. I mean, you look at things, you're thinking, well, Dovzan's lost the lead of this race and he's 1.5 seconds behind Loke at the moment. He's doing an absolutely superb job as well, because he's pulled 1.5 seconds off the rest of the field. And if he finds a bit more time, he might still get second place even with that penalty.
Yeah, I think it is just where we said earlier, about differences in setups. I think Loke is one of the drivers who banked it a bit more safe, maybe banked on the wet weather coming into their own. And you can see they're absolutely in their element here. Corner after corner, 10th after 10th, it's all immediately building up. And so far, at least, it looks like nothing is going to stop that Alpine's momentum at all. But heading down the field to say the reason why they're pulling such a gap as well is down the field. It's very congested, it's very tight, and a lot of drivers are getting spooked. So we saw a little bit of a battle between Jan Haladej and Dempsey. Haladej had a bit of a wobble, and that's ultimately scared Dempsey out of making the move, heading up through Sector 2 and into Power. But look, yeah, safety car. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Morgan Bowles had a spin. Sorry to interrupt you, Ben. Morgan Bowles had a spin coming through Blanchimont, broken his front wing. And yeah, that has led to another safety car. So this is intriguing. If we were going to see wet tyres, that might be a bit of a point, because they'll be going slower, they'll be losing temperature in those sets of intermediates, and someone has gone for it. Get owned. Wet tyres, Zoltan Boda. Wet tyres, Morgan Ball going out on a set of intermediates with his front. They're looking at that. It doesn't look like they've chased his front wing. So yeah, not quite sure what's gone off there with the Red Bull pit crew. We sometimes moan right in the real life about Red Bull performing differently for their two different drivers. I can't remember them refusing to change anyone's front wing ever before. But Morgan Ball out there still on a set of intermediates, and out there still with no front wing, unfortunately for him. Joseph Loke has built up all that lead. It all closes back down again. We'll be keeping a strong eye on what Get Owned and Zoltan Boda can do. It's definitely a lot wetter than before, but I can't see too much standing water out on the circuit at the moment, which is normally where the wets come into their own.
Well, say officially, according to the data, we are in heavy rain territory, as they even indicating so much as a potential thunder on the horizon. So if there is a window where drivers are going to be changing to the full wet compounds, now would be the time. So we've seen drivers, say like Zoltan Boda, Get Owned, potentially trying to make up some last-minute positions with the wet compound, as we have that safety net with the safety car. Say Marshall's being very efficient to get some of the carbon debris and that front wing, of course, off of the track, making sure everyone's safe. Big love to all of the marshals and all of the personnel who make these races possible for us. But say heading through the safety car, it's got to be brutal. I've got to be honest, it's got to be brutal for Loke there. So they did so well to pull out such a lead, really just maximize that window that they had. And just like that, say one small incident, arguably at much lower down the field, has ultimately put all that to ruin.
Yeah, I mean, you could arguably say that Stewart's in-game race director a bit hasty to put out a full safety car then. The field was still very bunched up. A virtual one, even local yellow flags might have been able to get rid of that debris nice and cleanly. We have still got a bit of a spread out field. They are only just catching up to the Aston Martin safety car, which is getting plenty of a run out today. You've always got to be careful around here, because you come around the corner quite fast and the safety car is going quite slow, and if you end up overtaking it, you've not got long to slam on the brakes and get yourself back behind Bert Nylander. Otherwise, you'll find yourself getting a disqualification. Loke still leading, Dovzan second. We've seen a few more penalties there. 3 seconds for all of the drivers that have still got penalties, as Morgan Ball comes into the pits once again, I imagine with an explicit instruction to get that front wing changed on this occasion. And we'll see whether he follows those ahead of him and goes for a set of the full wet tyres, or whether he does still stick on intermediates, because it's looking very heavy rain out there, but we're not seeing it settle too much on the track. And where the wets might have a tiny bit of advantage is just building up that temperature in the first lap after the safety car.
Yeah, it's all to play for here. Let's say we got everyone, for the most part, opting to stay on the inters, with the exception of some of the back markers where they don't have necessarily the same stakes as some of the front runners do. I think we're coming into that window where, say, the pit stop and the track positions at play aren't worth making the pit stops, even if it is well into full wet territory. Say the track conditions look like they're getting worse by the minute, by the lap. But in the case of drivers like Loke, Dobbs and Lukomsky, they can't afford to lose those track positions, because for all they know, with how bunched up the pack is, they're not going to be making it back. But it looks like we just had a disconnection there.
Yeah, we have had a disconnection, unfortunately. I didn't quite see who that was, but hopefully they'll be able to get themselves back in. They might have some time, because Morgan Ball's car is a long, long way off the back of the safety car at the moment. So they might still have enough time to get in, which would leave us with 5 green flag laps. The safety car comes in this time around, we're only going to have 6. So good news for those on the wet tyres. The longer this safety car stays out, the wetter the track gets. Just having it confirmed from Hisam in the chat that it was Jake Finch disconnecting. So the Red Bull in 8th place could find himself dropping a long, long way down the order, as we saw Maynard did earlier. going back to my original point, good news for those on the wets, the track's getting wetter under this safety car. Bad news is, we're down in 15th, and now all of a sudden you've only got 5 laps to go, and not 6 laps, once that safety car comes in. And we'll see whether Loke can just escape in the same way that he did earlier, which some of it may have been down towards fresh tyres, but we didn't see anyone else on a fresher set of intermediates fly their way up the order, as Jake has thankfully been able to rejoin. This could be very intriguing, because I think once he'll come in, once the safety car comes in, I think that first lap is going to be the big question for everyone, as Jeffrey Ritchie gets a very harsh time penalty for ignoring a yellow flag, because I think Maras had disconnected as he got that, and Maynard as well. A few people might need to pay their internet bills a bit more here, because we're having quite a few issues. As I was saying, I think if you pit at the end of lap number 18, you might still be able to make up that gap if the rain absolutely comes hammering down, because it's a very short pit lane at Spa.
Yeah, that is true. And if we can just sort of touch on the disconnect issue in a minute, there's never a good time to disconnect, but if you had to pick a time, arguably this would be it. Say everyone's behind the safety car, there's not going to be any position changing or any really time delta lost, so provided you can get back in quickly, the safety car period is ultimately almost like a mulligan. Say if the drivers do end up disconnecting, they have necessarily that free period to get back in without consequence in a lot of cases.
Yeah, which is, and like you said, it's an ideal time for it to happen, if there is an ideal time, because you never know if it's going to mess things up. You never know when the car is going to let you take control. It's not ideal if you're stuck behind the lapped car, or, well, the disconnected car under the safety car, because it will be going a lot slower afterwards. Richie should be able to get that 5-second penalty removed if he can prove it was down to a disconnection, as long as it did not happen before. As you can just see Joseph Loke here looking for his first win of the season here in PSGL F3, looking to see what he can do. 4 points so far, with a 7th place for Austria because of his real-life racing wasn't there at Miami. But with Van Dijken and Bowden not scoring too many points, this could really push the young Englishman up the championship. It's going to be a fascinating final 5 laps.
Yeah, so looking exciting. We can see, say, hopping on with Loke, taking a look at their cockpit and say taking a look at some of their telemetry, the amount of scrubbing they're trying to do on the tyres today, just keeping that heat in at all costs. You see safety car is breaking away, so heading in this lap. The amount to say swerving, trying to keep the heat in at all costs, especially as it gets wetter and wetter on track. It's not getting any drier. They know that full well, but again, they have to commit to the choice that they've made at this point. So maximising the inters, and really just with the dwindling grip, I'm certainly nervous. I don't think we're going to see the same breakaways at the front of the field like we saw with the last stint. Loke doesn't look as confident as they otherwise were. So a lot of micro adjustment suggests to me that they're feeling a little bit out of their depth.
Yeah, and they might need a boat that can cope with some severe depths of water soon. We'll see what Loke can do then as he gets his restart back underway. A massive snap of oversteer coming through the bus stop chicane, but we are back to green flag running again. Loke leads the field, and everyone has managed to make it cleanly through that part of the circuit. Loke, Dovzan, Lukomsky, Lamanen, Main, and Haladej there trying to have a battle on the Mercedes, who, as we just checked quickly, I believe is back into the session. Get owned all over the back of Jona Martins at the moment, who's battling with Jarne Turkov. They're having a battle, and just look at the tiny bit of extra traction that Get owned is able to get. He's got past one of the cars he was battling. He's got past both of them. Get owned there up in toward 13th place. Martins is off the road trying to overtake Turkov, who has a massive slide. And Morgan Ball also able to get the Aston Martin man as well. Drake Dempsey battling with Jan Haladaj and Mayner. Can't quite manage to get his way inside. Mayner goes off the circuit. That should surely give the opportunity to Dempsey to get past him. He is now up into 6th. We said no one was going to be able to escape away. Somehow, Joseph Locus did it. He's 2 seconds ahead at the front of the field, as Jona Martins has crashed out at Lacombe. Well, I think he's just retired on track at Lacombe, because his car was still moving a tiny bit there. We'll have to see what's happened with him. 4.5 laps to go. Joseph Loke has a 2.5 second lead. I think we're pretty much at the crossover point between the intermediates and the wets. Neither tyre is looking massively better at the moment, although saying that, Get Owned has just managed to get his way past Maras at Pujon, which is not something you see too often.
Yeah, certainly some heroics going into there, for sure. Say, I'll hold up my hands up, say I was wrong. Loke doing amazingly to stretch almost a 3 second gap looks like all of that scrubbing and tyre heat retention has proved to be worth it. So that gap is only growing. They're on a lot younger tyres than Dobson and Lekomsky behind them. So those lap differences are all but crucial. Although I still think that, as we've seen from moves like Get Owned and Zoltan Boda, the wets are still definitely optimal. So as much heat conservation as they've tried to do with the tyres, looking at, say, Loke's thermal statistics, they are consistently below operating windows. They were in sort of like the 60, 50 degree range throughout a lot of the lap. And that is still, while it's a good compound temperature for, say, the inters, they're much softer compared to the dries owing to the reduced friction on the surface. It's still not where you want to be. You still need some good levels of heat through those tyres in order to get them to operate just where you want.
Yeah, I think now that the wets have got up to temperature, we're seeing Getone and Boda move through their field a lot quicker. 10 seconds is the gap at the moment. We'll keep an eye what that is gap between Loke and Getone. I mean, Getone's only 5 seconds off the podium here. He has got a penalty, as has the majority of the field. It is only Loke, Dempsey, Maynard, Boda, Karapi and Maras who are yet to get a penalty. So maybe even Zoltan Boda all of a sudden could be looking very good to take the championship lead once more. Joseph Loke, it's like he's driving on a different game in a different formula to everyone else at the moment. He's 5 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack after only, well, not even 1.5 laps yet. He is flying his way up the order. He's the only one, it seems, that is still able to make these intermediate tyres work. We'll see as the rain continues whether he's still able to make them work as the race goes on. Ghetto now gets his way past Laminen. He's into the top 7 all of a sudden, and his next target will be Jake Finch, slightly up the road as Modesto Maynard also gets past the Alpine of Laminen, and I don't think it'll be too long before Richie and Boda are following their way through. There goes one Alfa Romeo around the outside, and I think the second one's going to have the inside for the next part of the campus chicane and should be able to outbrake Laminen. All of a sudden, 4 places lost in the space of 4 corners for the reserve in the Alpine. His teammate for tonight, though, is just still continuing to streak away, and Getone's just catching everyone else up. It's still Loke who's the fastest man out on track.
Yeah, that absolute weapon of the AlphaTauri, those wet tyres. But I think, I say, the reason to Loke's success is just they've adapted perfectly to the situation. They've pre-read the wet conditions almost perfectly. It looks like they've got a lot more control, say, optimize things like differentials, the brake balance. Notice how little things in the way they drive, say, being a lot more gentle with the throttle application, potentially short shifting a little bit more, not needing all of the torque of these engines, as of course the hybrid system to boot. As we see a retirement from, say, the Sim McLaren, looks like a pit lane retirement there, potentially just calling it quits and, say, not gelling with the conditions.
Yeah, definitely not gelling with the conditions. That is our championship leader, so that is a big news, obviously, for this championship, because Boda, without any penalty, one of now only 4 drivers in this race not to have a penalty, now that Dempsey's got one, he's going to gain some big points here. Getone has got himself up in towards 5th place. 2nd place is very possible for the Shizou driver, for the AlphaTauri. Getting that gap up towards Joseph Loke, I mean, he has got to catch up 13.5 seconds because of the penalty in 2.5 laps. And it is absolutely biblical weather conditions out here all of a sudden. These intermediate tyres might start sliding off the track soon, so I would not count that out. There goes Getone up into 4th place all of a sudden. Nicely done from him. What are we seeing further down the order? Jeffrey Ritchie, he's still looking for his first points of the season. He's all over the back of Modesto Maynard, who stands to gain a bit with these penalties. It's fantastic at the moment, because even though you'd say in normal situations this is Loke's in the bag, in weather like this nothing can be taken for granted, as that is Getone into 3rd, and I think in about 5 seconds, as Dovzan has a massive slide, we'll be seeing the AlphaTauri sweep past into 2nd.
Yeah, I don't think either of us really expected that wet gamble to be quite as powerful as it's been. Say, from coming down from, say, I think it was the P15 and P17 at the safety car restart, all the way up to P2 and P7. I think we truly underestimated how powerful the wet combo is going to be. But saying that, Garen just had a massive lockup heading into the bus stop chicane, but just goes to show the grip in those wet tyres compared to the Inters. The Inters clearly not having the level of water dispersion that the wets do, and it's definitely showing. So that got 13.5 seconds to make up, as you say, with the penalty. Got just under 2 laps to do it. I don't know how plausible it is, but certainly giving it a college try, I think it's slim, but not impossible. And I think with, as you say, how unpredictable things can be, I don't think we can take that win for granted from Loke just yet. I think jury's still out.
I mean, we're talking about Ghetto. If the race finished with the timings that they are now, Zoltan Boda does not have a penalty, and he's within 3 seconds of Ghetto, as I think Lekomsky and Dovzan there both going a bit wide. Zoltan Boda could end up winning this race to go with that second place he got in round number 1 of the season, and that would be a big, big step towards what is still the very early stages of the championship. But we're at round 3 out of 11 after tonight. Doesn't take too much before it can cost you in the championship standings, and now the gap is starting to come down between Ghetto and Joseph Loke. About 2 seconds on this lap. This is going to go right down to the wire, I think. Further back, still Richie and Modesto Mena are having a bit of a battle. They're almost touching as they come from Pujon there. Can Richie get a better exit down the inside into the campus chicane? He thinks about it. Definitely not in these conditions. Dempsey and Fincher having a fantastic battle up there ahead as well. This is going to be extremely close. I think you can count Ghetto out of this now. It is just, can Zoltan Boda somehow... He's got to gain 9.7 seconds in 1 lap. It is a big, big ask. And I think he's just going to come short.
It's certainly going to give it the old college try, though, because that wet advantage is just too big to ignore. And I think, speaking on that, sort of a quiet surge. So in terms of raw time difference, but it's a big contact between Jake Finch and Jan Haladej, completely locking up. The Red Bull just soars into the bus stop chicane, collects Jan Haladej on the way through. Yeah, and just goes to show, the grip level on those Inters, especially with Inter starting to wear in a little bit. These drivers are trying to make the most of it, but it's still a risky game to play.
Yeah, I mean, Jarno Tripkov, we've completely missed this. He's been back into the pits again, put on a set of wet tyres, and he's now catching up with the rest of the field. He's got ahead of Thomas Lamanen, so maybe even Tripkov can pick his way up into the points here, but it is all we're going to see here. Can Joseph Loke hold on that set of the intermediate tyres? The umbrellas are up here at the Belgian Grand Prix. He's got to lose 8.2 seconds, 8.1 seconds to get owned, and 7.8 on Boda on this lap. Jeffrey Ritchie, all of a sudden with a contact that's happening up ahead. He shot himself the order in towards 7th place, and Jan Haladej thinks about getting the move back into Bruchel, and there comes Modesto Mena down the inside of the Aston Martin. Things very close between the Mercedes and the Aston. Mena's just got his nose ahead, and I think we'll be able to hold on to that position. 4.2, 4.1 seconds is the gap at the front of the field, and we've only really got one massively heavy braking zone now in towards the bus stop. But in these conditions, we've already seen how badly wrong things can go there, and it looks like Loke is just about going to hold on to this. Turpkov's flying his way up the order as well. He's into 11th all of a sudden. He's got so much more grip than everyone else around him on that set of the wet tyres. He could gain quite a few places in the final few corners, but it is the final corner for Joseph Loke. He gambled on staying on the intermediates. It's worked out for him. Loke wins here at Belgium. Ghetto crosses the line in second. Loses out, though, to Zoltan Boda on penalty. Simon Lekomsky has had a moment through Blanchimont on the final lap and lost his front wing. Dovzan, Dempsey, Ritchie, Mena, Maras, Turkov, Haladej, I think are going to be the rest of the points finishers. We'll have to wait and see what order that is going to be in. One more lap, and I think that would have been it. But Joseph Loke, ridiculous pace on that intermediates at the start, and he takes his first win of the season.
I think that was just a car control masterclass there from that Alpine. Of course, on the tyre disadvantage, especially in the later laps, and looking at the back of the field. So the Aston Martin, from the pit stop to the end of the race, we're talking a 30-second time difference, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. And yet, through all of that, Loke just absolutely nailed the car control, nailed what they needed to do to just eke out those inters to the very end. And what a performance. Even against adversity, what a performance. Yeah,
certainly. I mean, sort of reminded me, I think we saw 97 and 98 Schumacher at Spa just blasting away from everyone on a set of the intermediate tyres. I've never really seen anyone do that in league racing up until tonight. And just look at what we've seen there from Joseph Loke. An absolutely fantastic performance. And our third winner from 3 races this season. Zoltan Boda manages to get second on the wets, keeping it clean as well on the penalties. He now takes the lead of the championship. Get Owned is in 3rd place. Drake Dempsey in 4th. How often in league racing do you see 17 seconds between the car in 3rd and the car in 4th? Almost unheard of. Modesto Mena rounds out the top 5 after a very eventful race for him. Govzan, Krapi, Ritchie, Maras and Turpkov are the provisional point scorers. Halledge, Finch, Ball, Lamanen, Lakomsky having that damage at the end, missing out. Van Dijken, Martins, a bad race for McLaren. Tyvard, Goetze and Blanak are retirements from, yeah, what was a very eventful race. I think it's fair to say there were various points there, Ben. We didn't really know what was going to happen, and I think you're right, neither of us called the supreme pace that we saw from Loke on those inters after both those safety cars.
Yeah, I think it's just, as we said, just absolutely, say, brilliant performance there. Just knowing exactly what they're working with and just playing it to a T. They weren't overdoing it. Say, despite the massive grip deficit, we didn't really see any wobbles. We didn't see any sort of corrective action. They didn't need it. Say, they were just perfectly within the limits. It was a great performance there. But yeah, I did not expect the level of tyre advantage we saw from full wet compounds, because I say Zoltan Boda, say, coming from, say, P17 to a P2 just in those last few laps of the race, purely on just like making a smart call with the tyres and keeping it within your limits, knowing that all of the drivers around you are essentially lapping in, at that point, F2 cars by comparison. You're the F1 car on the F2 grid at that stage with that difference in performance, and to say worked to do that really well, both of the wet runners at the front of the grid, and just, yeah, keeping it clean, keeping it very nice and tidy. Say Loke and Zoltan Boda, say both brilliant performances there.
Yeah, certainly, and we've got Joseph Loke and we've got Get Owned in the commentary box. So we'll start off the interviews with our race winner, Joseph Loke. A fantastic job from you today. I bet you're so glad that the Belgian Grand Prix isn't 23 laps long.
Oh yeah, exactly. It was very, very tricky to just keep it on the track, especially with how slippy it was on the Inter. The wets were quite clearly so much quicker towards the end, and yeah, like you say, if it was another lap longer, I probably wouldn't have kept hold of that. So, but yeah, I gambled on a bit higher tyre pressures because obviously I knew the rain would come, and obviously the higher pressures obviously meant that my Inter stayed in the temperature window, and I assume that's where the others were struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I was about to ask how come you were so good on the intermediate tyres, but you read my mind there. And did you expect the rain to come as early as it did? Because you pitted under the first safety car for the set of the soft tyres. What sort of indications were you getting from the game of when the rain was about to come? Because it seemed to catch a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, well, obviously it said on, because obviously I went for an extra lap because obviously I kind of went for the pit lane and then kind of bottled out of it a little bit. But yeah, obviously I then asked the engineer stuff like that, and he said that it was inbound and it's like 5 minutes or so. So I was like, right, okay. It did say it would be light rain, so I didn't think it would like within half a lap be full into condition. So I was like, right, let's go for the softs. We'll get a couple of laps, be able to pull a gap on the Inter drivers, and then be able to pit onto the Inters and just kind of keep the lead that way. But it would just started raining straight away. So that safety car, the second one straight after, kind of saved me a little bit.
Yeah, it all worked out very well. Ben, any questions for our race winner?
Yeah, I think my main question here is to say, of course, very well played. To say you adapted brilliantly to the rapidly changing conditions. What would you say is the main thing? Because of course, you have changing grip levels. You read well with the tire pressures. So I think it's a very smart play. But in terms of how you drove, how you kept it on track, how did you necessarily have to adapt? Because of course, the grip levels, temperatures, they're all very rapidly changing in a scenario like that.
Yeah, obviously when it's dry to Inter, it's always really tricky to not over push the entries, the corners, stuff like that. So I almost just kind of under pushed it slightly. You'd probably see in the first few laps on the Inters, everyone kind of was going a little bit deep, and I was almost braking too early, but making sure I made the apex and got the exits. And I guess that was obviously working. When the safety car came out after a few laps of the Inters, I was a bit annoyed because obviously I'd had that advantage of just being able to get the gap, and I didn't think I'd keep the pace advantage that I had. So but obviously managed to. I guess the high tire pressures came in clutch a little bit.
Yeah, and in fact, we were saying in the box as well, as they can't imagine the frustration as they to make that gap, and only for it to be taken away, say through scenarios like that on track. But yeah, I think we certainly noticed that in the box, as where a lot of drivers were getting quite squirrely under throttle, say trying to maximize on track. You were keeping it very stable, and I think ultimately that was the right play, and it clearly came in clutch, as say down to the wire, but still a P1.
Yeah, 100%. Really happy with it. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, congratulations, Joseph, on your victory, and yeah, we might see you again this season.
I hope so.
Now we're going to bring in our man who finished in third place in that race, just getting picked because of penalties at the end. Get owned. And Ben, why don't you take us through this one?
First question for me here, say for you. I mean, first off, brilliant performance there. So making the most in the later laps. What was the thought process behind the early switch to the wets, at least for you?
Yeah, well, basically, pretty much since lap 1, I had nothing to lose the whole race because of my qualifying position. So, yeah, I just gambled a lot this race. I even went on mediums literally 1 lap before it actually started to rain. So, yeah, I hope there was no rain, but it eventually came like 1 lap later. So, yeah, and then a safety car came out like right before the last chicane, and I was like, for sure it's gonna start raining a bit more from the weather forecast. So yeah, I just switched to wets, and it worked out quite well.
Yeah, of course, having nothing to lose, really, say in the lower positions there, you can take a bit more of those risks, and I'd say the gamble played out massively in your favor. Yes, the other thing is, how did you navigate the grid so efficiently? Because when you've got that level of pace advantage, I'm sure you're struggling a little bit with getting around some of the traffic.
Well, basically, I just wanted to overtake them in traction zones because the wets have a lot more grip than the intermediates. So it was actually quite easy. But honestly, I just wanted to get the 3-second gap the whole time to Sultan. I wasn't really looking at how to overtake or where to overtake. I just wanted to get the 3 seconds. And actually, I had the 3 seconds for once, but then when I was overtaking, I think the P2 Interrunner, I instantly braked myself and lost like 2 seconds in the last chicane, which cost me at the end. But yeah, P3 is still a very good result from where I started.
Very nice.
Yeah, it certainly is. I was just going to say, you've reserved a couple of times this season, get owned. Heading into next week, Mexico, if you get a chance again, how do you feel about that circuit?
I actually like the circuit a lot. I mean, on this game, I think I just need to work on qualifying pace. I think otherwise it's fine. I mean, race pace, I also struggle a bit at the beginning when the tires are cold or for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm really not consistent in the first few laps. I really need to work on that. But yeah, I would look forward to Mexico if I can drive next week.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that one goes. So, Ben, do you have any more questions?
No, that is all from me. It's a brilliant performance today, and say that gamble played out in your favour, and you negotiated the pretty much the entire field with class there. So very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly same from me. So congratulations, get owned, and we'll let you head off.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Yeah, thanks to Joseph and Get Owned for joining us there. Heading into next week, as we've already mentioned, it is going to be the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, the Mexican Grand Prix. Anything we can expect around that circuit? Again, you know, it's known for being a bit of a slipstream fest.
Yeah, say a little bit of a slipstream fest. I think we're going to see potentially some heroics, potentially some big drama, especially heading up to, say, the start-finish line. I think we're going to see drivers potentially pushing the limits a little bit too hard there. Of course, it comes down a lot to conditions and setups, but I wouldn't say there's any sort of hard predictions because that track can be a little bit unpredictable if you get a little bit too greedy.
Yeah, it certainly can. It is going to be a fascinating one. If you want to see more, though, from Spa-Francorchamps, you can check out the rest of the PC action. We've got some tiers live now with Chris Buxton taking us through the F2 action with some of the best drivers outside of esports. You'll see lower tier PlayStation on the Sunday and the top tier from the PlayStation on the Monday before PC F1 is back on Wednesday around Mexico with Dan Field making his return to the top tier commentary box alongside Jack Canarm. Thanks to the drivers for joining us in the commentary box. Thanks to them all for putting on a fantastic race. Thanks to Ben for being a superb standing at short notice for tonight. And thanks so much to everyone at home for watching. And we will see you in a week's time at Mexico. We've had 3 different winners out of 3 races in F3. Will we see 4 out of 4 at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez? Take care of yourselves, everyone, and goodbye.
Was brought to you by GT Omega and Grid Rival, proudly supporting PSGL.